Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.
All right, it is Friday, March 30th, 2018. Spring is underway, but it's still Michigan weather, and I'm here in the Detroit is Different podcast studios with one of the people that I sparked this whole podcast thing with. I have a lot of recordings with this man. He's one of the best people that I believe I can think off of on my feet and just be real. Explore what's happening in life, explore what's happening in culture, explore what's to happen in the future. Eric Campbell, the writer, the guitarist, the
used to be.
Well, he's saying he's retired right now. The heck of a bartender. the
that's too many hats.
Father.
That's already too many hats.
Son. And my homie Eric Campbell. What's going on?
Man, Kyrie, it's good to be here, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to be here. And I forgot we used to have those conversations downstairs, man. That was great. Just talking about stuff and getting it on tape and
pontificating. You took a lot of it. It was the start of what became my Detroit. If Detroit Were Having an album, and you've done some work with it as well.
Yeah. And
we can kind of start with these conversations here. I'm going to go through the traditional route of the Detroit is Different interview.
You do that.
Your family in Detroit. What's the ties? What led your family to come to Detroit?
Well, we've been here. You know, I'm born and raised, but I'm raised. I shouldn't say I was born. I was born in Buffalo, New York. And my family's mostly East Coast. My parents were both born in New York City, Bronx, Jamaica, Queens. And I believe it was my father's job opportunities that led him to Buffalo and then to Detroit. So we arrived in Detroit in 1973, the summer of 1973.
Okay.
Far northwest corner, like 8 Mile Lasser areas where I came up, and that's where it all started.
Okay, and like I always say, you were around Northland Skating Rink.
I was right there, right down the block. Northland Skating Rink, Northland Mall, Northland everything.
Northland everything. It was like,
right. It was all north.
I'm going to have the good brother Herman Davis come in here and talk all about Northland Skating Rink very soon.
Yep, they're still going.
But let's talk about that community. What do you remember moving from Buffalo over this way?
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about Buffalo?
I don't remember much about Buffalo.
Because you were so young.
I remember there was train tracks. There were elevated train tracks at the end of our block. That's the one thing when I think back to Buffalo. That's the one like memory that I have outside of the house.
You don't remember O.J. Simpson?
I don't. Reggie McKenzie. I remember I had a. Reggie McKenzie was a guy who famously blocked for the guards for Buffalo Bills for O.J. Yeah, and I remember I had we had friends in Buffalo that knew Reggie McKenzie, and I had this autograph photo of Reggie McKenzie. I remember it's black and white old school autograph from Reggie McKenzie, Buffalo
360,
Bills.
the guy from Detroit, well, really Highland Park.
Yeah.
Right in this neighborhood, actually. Reggie McKenzie Field is blocks away from here.
That's right. Yeah, it all ties together. Ties together. So, yeah, we moved to Detroit, and
didn't get to meet the juice, though.
Didn't get we weren't that high up on the ladder. Didn't get to the juice.
Didn't have a picture of the juice.
Nah, man, nah. Reggie McKenzie was enough in those days.
I got you.
But, yeah, man, we moved to Detroit, and 8 and Lasser, and the neighborhood, it was fantastic, man. I remember it was all about outside, Nerf football on the street. Mm-hmm. A big part of my upbringing was there was a church called St. Eugene's right on Berg Road, which is a couple blocks from our house, and they had a very, very well put together, softball, youth baseball league. My father coached baseball and softball because he played baseball back on the East Coast. So, we had that like stability in the sense that my father was working, but he was also, out there coaching for us and, getting the kids together. And it was all about the kids in the street and running around and being together. Okay,
like 70s baseball, because right now in the opening day praise that's happening right now.
That's
right. Black kids really aren't into baseball in this era, but back in the day, like your dad was coaching black kids playing baseball.
Yeah, it was. Our neighborhood was definitely diverse, but it was majority black, as the rest of the city was and is. And it's funny because I was thinking about, because I'm in Southwest now, and Western High School is mostly like the baseball team there, they've got like, the premier baseball team in the DPS right now and have for several years. It's mostly Latino, with some black and white mixed in. So that's part of that culture in that area down there. But I think that's changed in the city as a lot of sports has changed according to how DPS, the school system, the sports kind of goes as the school system goes. So, you know how it was back in the 70s and 80s, and when DPS was strong and high schools were strong, with sports teams were strong, and that all kind of works together. So that spills over into youth organizations in the neighborhoods. St. Eugene's West 7 was really big back in the day. So we had a lot of areas, a lot of organizations in which to be extracurricular with the sports and non-sports as well.
All right. So what are some of the things other than the sports, like what are some landmarks, some people, some places, some things that stand out in your young mind of that community?
Well, Northland Skating Rink is one. You mentioned that. Rouge Golf Course over there, which has been a Rogel Golf Course. I'm sorry. There's Rouge Park is further west, but Rogel Golf Course is right there on 7th and Berg. And I remember you would go down when Berg crossed over 7 Mile going south, you go down that big hill and there'd be houses and you'd be right by the golf course, and we would.
Wasn't it like an amusement park over there?
Yeah. What was it called? Oh man, I can't think of it now.
I mean, it was like more like a carnival.
There was but it was straight up. Well, it wasn't quite an amusement park, but it was. I mean, there was like a roller coaster. And it was like a small amusement park. It was right on 7 and right on 7 and Berg. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was kind of on its way out when I was coming up, but it existed. We went we went a couple of times when I was a kid, and that's a crazy memory actually. I hadn't thought about that amusement park in a while. It's one of those things you just can't imagine. Being in the city and having just a straight up amusement park.
Yeah, you can walk down
right
the street
in the
and get on a roller coaster.
Right. Can't do that now.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah,
it's a new type of drug that's going on in that house.
It is.
If you get invited to a roller coaster ride, 2018 in Detroit.
Yeah,
city limits.
But we had the YMCA over on 7 and Lasser as well, or 7 the Burger Lasser, I think 7 and Lasser. There was a YMCA over that we would go to and swim and.
I learned how to swim because in the Taki Taliba we went there to that Y.
Yep, that's right there, right on the corner. Yeah. So man, that was where we were at from 73 to we sold the house. My mother sold the house I think in 90.
Okay. So over that change, what did you see transition like in the neighborhood as far as the neighbors? Any of the attitudes, any of the culture, anything changed from 73 over to 90 that you remember?
Man, I'm trying to think. I mean, it got the neighborhood relatively speaking was stable in the sense that we never felt like we couldn't go out and run around and do our thing. I've been back over there. I got 2 little ones now. We've driven back through there a couple of times just to be like, hey, I came up here. This is what was going on, and this is where I came up. And the neighborhood, it looks great. I mean, I got to go by the look. I haven't really hung out much over there because we've been in Southwest for the past few years, a very different part of town geographically. But it looks like it's held up fairly well. I mean, if you look at like Redfern, and actually I have a good friend actually who moved in adulthood. He came up over by Mumford, and he actually moved to the block over from where we were at on Redfern, and he brought his kids up over there, and it's still cool over there, definitely.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the transition from like junior high. Where did you end up going to high school?
I went to Renaissance.
Okay, Renaissance.
Yeah.
Renaissance.
Phoenix.
What was that like? Was this in the 80s, 90s? What was this?
Mid 80s.
Mid 80s?
Yeah.
Okay, when did Renaissance open?
Renaissance opened in 79.
Okay, so you were like a part of the start of the classes at Renaissance.
One of the first, yeah. I my first year was 82, 83. Back in the little building where Flicks is now, down the street from the current Renaissance. It's a whole different ball game from the new school. The new school is much larger. The student body is much larger, and the sports program is much more significant now than it was when I was there. When I was there, it was 700 kids, and it was a very small building, but it was a great environment at that time because it was still fairly new, and I think that going to a school with a smaller student body like that creates that kind of atmosphere of closeness between students. We definitely had that.
What was the call to action that led your parents to say you want to go to Renaissance? And then what did you think about the school? Because it kind of coming up on the scene was in this idea of school of choice. What was the spin? What was the sales? What was the marketing throughout the neighborhood on what Renaissance is and what it will be? That's
actually a really good question. That would actually this would be a great opportunity now to look back on that, because it was, it was in a sense a school of choice, and it operated. I mean, it was part of VPS obviously, but it had its own little niche. So the choices that we had to make, I didn't have a choice to really go to. My choice was certainly limited to DPS, but I was blessed enough to have the opportunity to go to, Cass or Renaissance. And I remember the one thing I remember about that decision process was going to Cass Tech's open house and just being overwhelmed by, the size, the scope of everything, and, just the size of the building. And I remember even the room that the open house was in was just it was just massive. And there were just, I think a lot of the decision I made and we made to go to Renaissance was based on just being able to wrap your head around the size of the buildings. Because my junior high, my elementary school were smaller, newer programs as well. So I think Renaissance just felt like, the more natural continuation, whereas Cass just seemed like it was just too much to take on, just size-wise.
Are you still close with any of your friends from Renaissance? I definitely believe that going to certain schools, especially in the high school era, you can grow different bonds that can be lasting for years to come. In a school like Renaissance, it's not like you're going to be generally next to Joe Schmo. It's almost an Ivy League of Detroit high schools. Well,
I remember. The short answer is I'm not really close to too many. I mean, I got a couple of friends that I'm in contact with, and there's folks that I run into now and then, and I'm not that Facebook guy either. So once you're off Facebook, you kind of have removed yourself from any sort of organization that happens in later years around high school. But I think that there's two things that work towards that. One is, like I mentioned earlier, it's a smaller school, so maybe there was a certain closeness that develops within the student body at that time. But it's also a magnet school, so you don't have that neighborhood connection as much as you might if you're in a neighborhood school, which is one thing that we're really missing, across the nation, especially in Detroit. Having that neighborhood school atmosphere, which is really what school is all about. School is supposed to be a center for community and community empowerment, and just a place to organize and gather. So we kind of missed out on that. So I don't know if that has to do with the fact that I'm not in close contact with a lot of my schoolmates from high school. But I mean, I see some folks from time to time and touch base with folks, here and there, but no one, I'm not really hanging with anyone from high school.
Okay. All right. After Renaissance, what was the journey?
Man, it gets weird. It gets weird. So I went up to Ann Arbor. I went to U of M right out of high school, and looking back, it was a weird choice, but I did it because I had family. I had an uncle who taught at U of M when we were young.
What did your uncle teach, and what was your major when you went?
My uncle he was a law professor. He was gone by the time I went to college, but when we were kids, we would go up to Ann Arbor. And so I always had this thing
this
about
idea of what U of M was
exactly
through the perspective of a child visiting your uncle.
Exactly. So when I got in, there was really not too much decision making to be done. I was pretty set on going to Ann Arbor from the get. I had some other friends who were going down to I had this other community of friends across the city from playing tennis as well. So I was big into tennis. Me and my brother were big into tennis as well. So I got a shout out to Metropolitan racket club, which I've been taking my kids to at 6 Mile and La Lodge, which is a crazy story in itself. But there was a lot of kids that, Mumford was a really fantastic tennis team back in the day. I don't know if a lot of people know that they were sending brothers to get tennis scholarships left and right. Mm-hmm. So a couple of my buddies went down south to play tennis, and I ended up going to U of M, and as quite a few of my class, ended up in Ann Arbor. And I went up to study. In my mind, my intention was to study architecture, but I stayed on that track for a little while, and then that's when I started getting involved in some music stuff, and I was up there for 2.5 years, never finished. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the bridge to the next chapter.
Okay.
Which involved the music. Okay,
so music and getting involved with music and playing.
Mm-hmm.
What instrument? I know this, but for the people that don't know this, what did you touch into? You were on a college campus. I assume it's a lot of bands and a lot of activities.
Yeah, and that was during the height of the electronic music thing in Detroit as well. So we're around like 90, 91.
Mm-hmm.
And I played a little piano as a kid. My father played a little bit of jazz and classical piano, and he got me and my brother both playing piano. And I stuck with it a little longer than my brother did. But by the time I was in college, I really wasn't playing much. But I had some fundamentals down as far as piano goes. Mm-hmm. And I got God, this is crazy. I didn't know we're going to be doing this personal journey. This is crazy, man.
Yeah.
This is I haven't talked about this part of the upbringing in a while, but it was definitely at that point, I met a couple folks up in Ann Arbor at the Nectarine Ballroom, which was doing a pretty serious electronic music set. I couldn't cite what night of the week it was, but Nectarine was bumping in Ann Arbor at that time. And this kid who I went to high school with, his brother was into electronic music. He was very, very immersed in the electronic music scene here in Detroit. And I think that's really how I started to get back into music. We started working on some stuff.
So it was more so like you came in as just enjoying the vibe in the field.
Mm-hmm.
From the vibe in the field, it's like, I want to do some of this.
Yeah.
And then you look up and you're a musician.
Well, I mean, in my mind, I'm a musician. I mean, yeah, that's basically how it was. I mean, I just got swept away by the electronic music scene, man. Because at that point, and that's what kind of led. I don't want to say that's what led me to leave school. There were a lot of different things going on, but I ended up leaving school and coming back and living downtown. And that was my first real downtown Detroit experience.
Okay. And what year?
So, like I said, at that point, it's probably 90, 91.
Okay, 91, yeah. Let's say like 92.
Yeah.
That's a different era. That's like Coleman Young still in office.
Mm-hmm.
What was downtown Detroit like then?
It's fun. It's beautiful, man. I mean, someone needs to write about it, because especially now that we're going through this whole so-called renaissance, and people are moving in and all these spaces are being taken up and all this, all these things are happening downtown. Downtown in the early 90s was, to me, obviously it's when I was coming up, so I got that memory. To me, it was much more interesting, even though there was much more space, and maybe it was because there was more space. You'd go downtown, and there was as much to do, but it was much more powerful, the things that were happening. Like you have things like the Music Institute, which was another center, another focus of the electronic music scene at that time.
Okay, Music Institute, explain. I'm unfamiliar.
Music Institute was, man, I don't know if I'm the guy to really
go all the way in.
Well, I can go in. I can go in a little bit. I mean, it was. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talk about the days when Kevin Saunderson and Derek May and Juan Atkins were still spinning downtown Detroit, and they were Music Institute was one of those places where it was really hardcore. The music was hardcore. It was late night. It was all about just the music. It was a very sparse, atmosphere.
What about the?
You didn't really go to
you were a part of this mix, like as a patron attendant. What was the feeling, the culture like for the people that were there, and where was it? Where was this located?
The Music Institute was on. Oh man, I was just thinking about. I just saw a documentary that cited the Music Institute the other day, and I was trying to think of where it was exactly. It was on. I couldn't even tell you. I want to say it was Grand River, near where TV Lounge is, but further in the downtown though. But I can't think of exactly.
Okay, so it's like along that track. So near what's that restaurant, like the Republic or?
Yeah, it wasn't that building. Actually, we were just by there today. There's 2 restaurants in there now, Republic and Parks and Rec.
Mm-hmm. But it's like that mix near like the Gaslight Lounge and Times Square. Around there. Before it was the Rosa Parks. Because I'm trying to think about what was happening before that transit center popped up over there.
It would be great. I mean, it would be lovely to. That's one of the things I'm thinking about now that I'm writing again is like trying to figure out how, people are doing it now. There's a lot of people going back to that time and trying to describe it and place it in Detroit history because it really was an interesting time.
And in the field, was it primarily like young people? Was it older people? Was it just artists? What was the field?
It was definitely artists and younger folks really that time. I mean it was diverse, but it was, if you had to generalize, it was definitely younger folks and it was definitely people who were, hardcore lovers of that music. 'Cause it was very new at that time.
And you know what's so funny about that? D, love you, D. Derek, that's my man.
Yeah.
Derek is so. Derek May is definitely on the Detroiter list that you need to meet as a Detroiter. But Derek even told me one time, he was like, man, Derek, Derek is so funny. He was like, look, man, you gotta do what you love, man, and then the people will connect to it,
Yeah.
Because he was even talking about the culture of the people that like the music, and that the audience and the culture and the experience that they created kept opening up new doors for him.
Yeah.
So it's like you end up playing some music for some, he's like, man, you wake up one day and you're playing some music for some white kids that are in the corner getting high. And then 10 years later, 15 years later, that guy is the executive running the marketing for Saab.
Right,
and then that guy opens up a door and they carry the music.
Yeah.
Especially that it was like something about that techno music and the electronic scene where they felt like they were a part of like a cult or something. Like it wasn't like going to see, I don't know. At the same time, it wasn't like going to see Right Said Fred.
It was something you can definitely say was new, at that time, and that's it's hard to look back in retrospect and kind of analyze it. But the one thing you can say is that it was a new phenomenon. The music was new, the scene was new, the culture was new, and a lot of that, it was happening in different places. You have to include Chicago in that conversation, but Detroit was definitely a part of that as well. So. It was crazy.
And in that field, was it, because I definitely have my own taste of what music is and what the industry is, but was the field headliner centric? Was it, so much based on we can't wait to see this person, or what was the tone? It was more like,
it was more like basement party. Like I'm going to this party, and it's not about, there might not even be a bar there, it just might be, it's really about just feeling this music. That's something that you haven't heard before.
Dance
and it's like in a sense, it's like what it is now when you see these big parties happening all over, and you now you see parties where there's thousands of people there, but take that and it's a smaller vibe, but it's more intense. It's more intense because it's not even about the people, because it's not that big on the list yet. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it was just more pure. I don't want to overstate it. But it was just this thing where I'm going out here to hear this music, and there might be, the Music Institute, not to overdo that spot, but there were nights when there were, 200 people there, but there were nights when there were 20 people there, but it was just intense because, you were just having this experience. You were just having this kind of mind experience with the music. And, it's not any different than people have that experience with any type of music, but, and I don't even want to try to
but that was the music for
at that moment, in your
moment, that moment in your life.
Yeah.
So that matching up, what was the downtown feel like as far as the look, the architecture? Because I sort of remember, but it's from a child or a younger person.
Yeah.
I'm teen or whatever.
Yeah. I just remember remember being just open. I just remember feeling because there wasn't nearly the amount of traffic. especially at night, whatever night of the week it was, and there was just like freedom to go like and explore. Whereas, I mean, to try to compare it to now, you're kind of like, you're kind of like kind of boxed in by, whether it's new businesses or more people, more traffic, or a larger police presence. I mean, it was just more free,
So you were one of those people that never said to yourself, like, man, it'd be great if Detroit could get some of New York. Because that was always, I think, one of the discussion points, back then. It was like, man, this downtown sucks. It should be like New York.
No, not. I'm glad you put it like that, because I don't think there was, it never felt like we were missing out. Like, it never felt like, the places, the people I was running with, the places we were going, that discussion never came up. It was never like, oh, I wish we had what New York had, Chicago had. It was cool. Mm-hmm. It was cool.
Like Trapper's Alley, I remember that.
Yeah, Trapper's Alley was big. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I
mean, there were spots to go. I mean, some of the same spots you see now, but I mean, certainly, the casinos weren't a presence yet. Which changed a lot as far as the landscape downtown. Mm-hmm. And as far as people coming down here, so I mean, try to imagine it without any of the casinos. Even if you just take that out, that changes a lot.
The feel of it. Mm-hmm. So with you along this time in the '90s, as now, I'm jumping it, and
Let's jump.
As time's rolling, writing and social awareness. As we met originally at the Michigan Citizen newspaper, where you've written a lot of great stories.
Yeah.
And an in-depth take with a lot of empathy. And then I feel like your pen, you always have like a very curious tone as far as like you're open to what it is or whomever you're talking to when you're writing something.
Yeah. So
from music to a social awareness and wanting to share that or just learn more about it yourself, where did that happen, or was it happen simultaneously?
Yeah, well, I think I've always been kind of an armchair activist. I've always kind of read about, what's going on in like the Middle East, paying more attention to, maybe some international aspects, American foreign policy and things like that. But the Michigan Citizen was really the first time that I got to get my hands dirty and at the same time appreciate the power that happens in the community at a local level. That's real. That's where real change happens.
So, how did you even end up getting the position in writing with the Michigan Citizen? What was it? How did you meet Catherine or Mrs. T, or how did that happen?
All right. So I have to admit, I mean, straight away before we get into that, I spent a long time in the restaurant bar industry, waiting tables, bartending, and so I'm a late bloomer as far as this work that we're doing, this movement work we're doing now. Like I said, I was really an armchair activist up until, the early 2000s when I got involved with the Michigan Citizen, 2005, or maybe actually it was even 2006 actually, when I really ended up going to the Michigan Citizen office. I actually met, prior to that, I picked up a Michigan Citizen. I was aware of Michigan Citizen newspaper, but for some reason, this one time I picked it up and really got into it, and it just had this drastic effect on me. And I actually sent an email to them, and I was like, look, this is who I am. I don't have a lot of formal writing experience, but I've written a little bit here and there in these different environments in different ways. This newspaper has become very important to me in a very short amount of time. What can I do to help out? I'll come down there and make coffee if that helps. I mean, the letter was really like, and I was serious.
You realize the leap of faith and the probability of that email generally being effective.
Normally that would not work. Yeah. But I was sincere. I mean, it was. I remember it being a fairly lengthy email, and I poured it out, and they remembered me. And they actually came and visited where I was working at the time. I was behind the bar, and my man Cottrell, Cottrell.
Yeah, man. What's up with Cottrell, man?
Everyone wants to know. That should be a newsletter. What's up with Cottrell?
Yeah,
where's
man,
he at?
Last time I saw him, it was like at Park Bar a couple years back.
He's still doing it, man. He's at. He's either at Wright & Company or he is at, what's the one where you enter through the alley? I'm forgetting that name too. I haven't been there very much, but he's at Wright and Company. He's working for those guys.
Okay.
And he's the most amazing bartender in the city, man. Go check out Cottrell. I'm gonna try that. If I think of the name of the bar, I can't think of the name of the bar right now. But he was there, and he was like, "Hey, He was like, "Hey, I'm serving Catherine Kelly and Terry Kelly from the Michigan Citizen, and I hadn't met them yet, and so I went over. I was like, "Hey, my name's Eric. I wrote you." And I just written them this email like a couple days before, and they're like, "Yeah, we saw that. You want to come down to a?" They just invited me down to an editorial meeting, so I just started attending editorial meetings, and that was it. I mean, it was they just welcomed me in, and I walked in almost at the same time as Bankalay was walking out. Actually,
yeah, very close.
Yeah, we actually almost literally crossed paths. Bankalay went from the Citizen to the Michigan
the Chronicle at the time.
Yep.
And to this day, it's weird. It's like I saw Bankalay, and I was like, when he wrote the editorial piece supporting Governor Snyder, and then I was like, man, why are you doing that? And like to this day, it's like it's changed our relationship.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But it's like as a dude, it's like that's like it's been some solid stuff that Bankalay has done for me. But just in the world of accountability, it's like, why in the hell would you support Governor Snyder?
It's hard to.
So it just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean his career path. I mean he was always a go-getter, man. I mean I remember when I went to the Citizen, man. I looked at some newspapers from the previous year or two, and he would have like 3 articles in like every piece. He hustles. But, I don't know about this path, from the Citizen to the Chronicle and now the News. I don't know. He's doing his thing, and he's on a path that I won't be on, but he's doing his thing, man,
Yeah, because if you support Governor Snyder, I'll say the same thing to you.
Yeah.
And hopefully if I ever supported Governor Snyder, you would say the same shit to me.
I'm not going to be supporting any governors in general.
I feel you, but I'm just, you know what I'm saying? I mean, if you my mans,
it's got to be said.
You gotta be said. If you really my mans, tell me some shit that needs to be said. Don't smile in my face, you know what I'm saying? And then we could, drink together, and then, when I walk away, it's like, damn, I can't believe he wrote that article.
Yeah, I've never really been. I mean, I don't know if that explains how I've jumped around through my life. I'm not really I don't want to say career, but like that. Like I'm not a careerist.
You are definitely an artiste.
I mean, you are
definitely an artiste.
Well, that's why this, and I'm not trying to segue into Riverwise, but that's why this Riverwise thing works out fantastic, because we can take a lot of those different components and put them together and. Get this message out about the community. But the Citizen, before we get to that, the Citizen, I just have to say, just always, man, I mean, much love to the Kellys. And I
have more Citizen questions. Yeah. One of them starting with, for a while, you covered the beat of Detroit City Council. Consistently getting down there often to, like, Tuesday meetings. Yeah. So forth and so on. What was that like, seeing it up close and personal from the perspective of how it's presented? Because I urge everyone, if you have the time and the availability, I think you should sit in the back of Frank Murphy Hall of Justice and just watch court proceedings one day. And you definitely should sit on a Tuesday to see how a council meeting goes. But as you watch that and you got a temperature for a lot of things, like, what context did that give you to put next to the people? Yeah. Because you were still interacting with a lot of the people that were generally down there with true grievances, gripes, and requests and demands of the elected officials.
Yeah. Well, let me say, first of all, I agree with you 110%. Everyone should go down to a city council meeting and check it out, because no matter how you feel about city government is run, no matter how you feel about how it should be run, it's just a great perspective on, because you're there. I mean, it's not like, dealing with the mayor's office. City council is a little bit more approachable. It feels like, whether it is or not, is debatable, but it feels democratic. You know what I'm saying? It feels like, you have some say.
You'll get a business card of a chief of staff.
You'll get your 2 minutes, and you'll get your 60 seconds at least.
Say what?
It's not at all already.
Say what? Somebody just dropped a bunch of old tires in your backyard.
But it's
get this person a call.
Yeah, I mean, you can, it's even now. I was down at City Council, and I didn't, I went down there at the Citizen, not as much as I would have liked to. I would go down there on certain issues, like if we were talking about education, there was a certain, certain things, certain legislation, local legislation being discussed. Sometimes I would go down there and check it out. But it was, and I went down there recently, and I had kind of the same feeling where it's like, if we were going to put our faith back into government on a local level, City Council will be the place to start. I have this idea about the next mayor's race. I want to do a T-shirt that says like City Council for mayor. Like let's mayor's office is inaccessible and it's bought. It's it's now run by by big money, especially. I mean, perhaps it always is, but I mean now especially you see like how in the case of certainly the Illiches and the Gilberts, how they kind of run things. There's glimpses of democracy when you go to City Council, at least, and I think it's an interesting experience. It'll either it'll push you one or two ways. It'll either buttress your faith in democracy, or it'll squash it, one or the other. But for me, it was always interesting to see the inner workings. You kind of get a glimpse of the actual workings of government. How the discussions work, and it gives you just a feeling that you're kind of a part of it. But at the same time, then you're like, okay, well, why can't we do this more? Why can't we make it more accessible? Why does it got to be on the 13th floor of this building? At times that people can't get down there. So there's also elements that you realize where it's purposely made not to be more accessible than it is. So it's interesting.
All right, so in talking about this, the Michigan Citizen from the community perspective, as working with the Citizen, especially with some of the powerful writers like Diane Bukowski, Teresa Kelly herself, I think Teresa is an excellent writer.
Yeah, I agree.
Almost like to the point where it's like, damn.
I agree.
Yeah, I keep telling her, it's like, write a book.
Right.
And it's like, oh, great, nobody wants to. And it's like, everybody will read your book.
People are talking about it.
Is her personal story is amazing. But Zenobia Jeffries, Bankalay's work, it's a lot of good writers that have touched down. Kwasi, Akwamu. The working with the Citizen is still a different perspective, just due to its ties to the community, and so many people that would just come into the Citizen just working there. Myself, it'd be like, people would come into the Citizen as if this is the only place and space they could have that would support them.
Yeah.
So what did that impact on your take on the community in working there, as far as what's happening with the people? Because at times, working with the Citizen, it seemed like, damn, for lack of a better term, shit is getting worse.
Yeah, well, I mean, compared to what I'm doing now, it was definitely, well, let me say this first. One of the things that stands out about the Michigan Citizen to me now, looking back, is that they had this amazing balance of, we're going to speak truth to power on the first couple of pages, and then on a couple of pages, we're going to show you what the people are doing to resist, the people who have been marginalized, in marginalized communities. So we're going to give you both. Right. Yeah. So it's one of the things we're trying to get you in Riverwise now too. It's like, yeah, and let me clarify that too. Yeah. Because it would be certain issues that the Citizen would take on and nobody else would take on. Absolutely.
And then seeing the guts of the truth of this stuff was like, damn, like the emergency management issue, for instance.
Yeah, they were the only ones that took that on. And, all the things that, if you want to look at them as warnings, a lot of the folks that were speaking out about emergency management in the very beginning, and speaking truth to that whole situation, everything, I mean, really actually worked out worse. I mean, everything that they spoke about, everything that they tried to warn us about has come to bear, and worse when you look at how, now how what's happened in Flint with the water, what's happened in Detroit and other communities with the schools. All of those things were, the Michigan Citizen was the only place where that discussion was being had, or the only place where that those warnings were being put out about, how anti-democratic that the emergency manager, that emergency management is. So, I mean, it was amazing. And then when we, when the Michigan Citizen closed its doors, maybe only then. I mean, I mean, everyone appreciated it, but like anything else, you appreciate it so much more when it's gone. And all of a sudden, the Michigan Citizen closes its doors in 2014, and you have this huge vacuum in the media landscape. And now it just feels like it's just a one-sided discussion. That's how powerful the Michigan Citizen was. It provided that whole other side, and it was, it was a lot of the viewpoints, a lot of the perspectives and articles were presented by the people themselves. So it was amazing.
And let's transition now to Riverwise.
Yeah,
which picks up some of those discussions, but I feel it's still very artistic and very it's very eclectic.
Mm-hmm.
Like the feel of a Riverwise is almost like it's like if the Michigan Citizen did the New York Times magazine on Sundays or something.
That's a great
what
analogy.
It feels like.
That's a great analogy. So we have that, Riverwise has that DNA from Michigan Citizen in several different ways. So Grace Shay Howell, of course, had a long running column in the Michigan Citizen. Grace Lee Boggs also did a weekly.
Yes. Rest in peace, Grace.
Rest in peace. She also did a weekly commentary in the Michigan Citizen. When the Michigan Citizen went away, when they closed its doors in 2014, I don't think it was more than a year later, I guess, at the Boggs Center, that discussions began to be had around, do we need something else now to fill that void? There's a lot of content, and I think the discussion took so long because, there's so much content out there now, but the Michigan Citizen was also special because they held on to print. They had a web presence as well, but it was a physical presence in the community. There were boxes everywhere. I don't think people even to this day realize the circulation that Michigan Citizen had and the presence physically. So the discussion around Riverwise became, in the beginning, it was like, okay, we need something else.
Which let me say this.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yes. To tens of thousands.
Mm-hmm.
So that discussion was, how do we, and I came into, I should say that I came into the discussion a little bit late. Shay called me at some point, I think it was at the beginning of 2016, and was like, hey, we're having these conversations about maybe doing a publication, not in the vein of Michigan Citizen, and I'll explain in a second how this is different, but something that is a voice of the community would be the main connection to the Michigan Citizen. So I don't know if you're familiar with Yes Magazine, but Yes Magazine is a national publication, and Sarah Van Gelder, who is one of the founders, was the publisher of Yes Magazine. Somehow got involved in one of those conversations, and Yes Magazine, what they do what we're doing locally, they do nationally. They're looking at organizations, individuals, groups that are on their own. People. These are people that we would consider marginalized by race, marginalized by class, marginalized by gender identity. These are folks that are creating solutions, in their own communities to some of these social injustices, and to see it all in one piece is very powerful. So Riverwise, in the beginning, sought to take that model and apply it, on a local level. We were going to focus on Detroit folks because we knew how much, working at the Michigan Citizen, working at the Boggs Center, we know how much work is going on, in the city all around. So that's how it started. That's how the conversation started, and by summer 2000 or late summer 2016, I was asked to kind of be the managing editor, be the one who's kind of hands-on and leading this effort, and
that's some strong negotiations because you're like De Niro in Casino, because I already know your first answer is no.
Well, it was just
after your first answer.
Well, when you're sitting in a room with all these these folks that have been doing this work for a long time. We mentioned Shay Howell and Kim Shirobi's in the collective. Gloria House is in the collective. A bunch of folks who are doing incredible work and have been doing incredible for a long time. So it was an honor just to be, again, another place where I would have just made coffee, if that's what was needed. But yeah, so I accepted that, and we got it together, man. We called some folks. We called folks that we knew who were doing work in certain communities, and the first issue came out in February 2017, and now we just released our 5th issue. We're a little over a year in. We just celebrated our first anniversary. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you have my homie Sterling DJing the
of
party.
course, man. That's he made it. He made it happen.
Good old Sterling.
He came through as somehow he always does. I don't know how he does it.
I'm pretty sure some Parliament made his way to the needle.
You already know. So yeah, Sterling was there, and
Uncle Jam was going.
We had a nice little set actually. I should shout out to Kraftwerk because they opened the doors to us on a Sunday, and they were wonderful hosts, and so we have a product now, and we're moving forward.
All right, so what has been the response to Riverwise been? What's the feel from the community? What callbacks have you gotten?
We've gotten a few. The response has been great. There's so much to talk about as far as this project goes, because a lot of this has been, a labor of love. Meaning there weren't necessarily. I mean, there was as much experience as there was in the room. There wasn't necessarily any specific magazine experience, right? So we had writers, we had artists, we had poets, we had activists. They were all in the room. But as far as putting together, a magazine that was going to be, a regular thing, it was kind of new for a lot of folks, or newer. So that alone, creates a situation where some interesting decisions are made, and I don't want to say we're winging it. We have focused conversations, and all of this is very, very much deliberated. The decisions we make, but when you have a group that can work together, and you're doing something new, there's the potential for some new things to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you're not necessarily working on a specific, rigid model. You're kind of like, you're coming up with ideas. You don't know if they're right or wrong, but they feel good, so you kind of go with it. The first issue that we put out was kind of it was a way of introducing this concept of the new work that's going on right now in Detroit. This solutionary work, these folks that are doing this work to create their own solutions to some of these social injustices, is a continuation. We want to link that to the longer movement, the movement that goes back, decades and of course much further. But we started it being the 50th anniversary when we came out of the '67 rebellion. We kind of took that as a point of departure and tried to create an arc to what's happening in the city now, as far as movement work, as far as work around Black liberation, as far as social justice work. So that was kind of the jump off point for the magazine. 1967 to 2017, and then 2067, because really this magazine is about the future, right? This magazine is about people who are doing this work that that will uplift society and create a better future.
2067. That's a concept that.
Yeah.
Boy.
Well, it's coming.
Boy. Yeah, it is coming.
Yeah.
It is coming.
So that was the beginning. That was the foundation for the magazine. Let's look at some of this work that's going on in Detroit. That's happening in different areas across the city. Let's try to kind of put it in one place, and let's see how we can be a vehicle for organization. Let's see how we can highlight this work that is happening, again, by communities that are marginalized, because the question we have to deal with is we have to grapple with the idea that it's possible that the solutions we're looking for are happening, but they're not happening in City Hall. They're certainly not happening in the State House. They're certainly not happening in D.C., but that doesn't mean that solutions aren't being created every day.
Yeah.
We're just not, maybe a lot of us, we are, we're kind of involved in the work, but a lot of folks just aren't looking in the right place. A lot of these solutions are happening in these communities that have been marginalized, and out of survival, they're creating solutions that will uplift everybody, if given the chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it being a quarterly, because a quarterly seems like one of those things where you're like, all right, in a quarter we probably can manage our time, our resources, get all this stuff straight.
Yeah.
Is it still like how the Citizen was the day before deadline, where it's like, oh man, because I remember that day before deadline with the Citizen, it was high energy.
That's an amazing question. You would think that, yes, that was the idea, was let's start quarterly. We'll have room to, it's a 32-page magazine. We'll have plenty of time to get this together. But,
Look up and it's like,
still ends up. We still end up scrambling. I don't know how they did it at the Michigan Citizen, how we did it at the Michigan Citizen weekly. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
We're working with, we're getting it out. It's a very small crew. Me as the managing editor, I've got my hands, on everything, which is, probably to the detriment on a certain level, until we get some folks and we can place them, in certain places. Then they can be devoted to certain tasks, as hopefully the money gets a little. The money allows. I didn't want to say the money, just the resources. The community, as the community resources allow. Because I don't want, it's not all about the money. It's about, donations come in money wise, but we also need donations as far as submissions, articles. We want this to be
cool.
We want this to be a magazine where
I can definitely submit you guys some stuff.
I know you can.
It's different.
And I'll tell you what, you did, and I want to thank you for your piece that you put in about Clements. And that was where I live was a beautiful piece, man. It was amazing.
I want to do let's see. I've been thinking about some. Right now, I've been in the music mode. Me and drummer Alex White, we finally decided on a band name, Gold Medallion. You may need to sit in with Gold Medallion.
I like that. I like that. That's a great name, man.
I told him, I was like, that's memorable. He was like, I don't know about it.
That's a great name, man.
I was like, hey, man, it's like, just imagine the taco meat and the. He was like, one of us gonna have to get a perm. I was like,
dude, that's a
it
great
ain't
name.
Gonna be me.
That's a tight name. Y'all started as a 2-piece?
I don't know what we gonna do.
But you got the name, though.
I know we have the name.
You got the name.
We have a tentative monthly at Tony V's and probably over at Queens with my man Handsome Sam.
Call me up, man.
So we'll
I want to come out and support. Gold Medallion. That's a tight name, dude.
So that's kind of what I'm gonna do. But
that lends itself to all sorts of images and covers and visuals already, man. You don't even need visuals.
Yes. So we'll be doing that. But creatively, I think we should do some more stuff, man. I want to do the audio version of it. So
yeah.
The doors are open.
Yeah.
I know you guys, I ran the concept by you before, but podcasting with Riverwise is you all may be able to bring the stories to life a little bit.
I was just going to say.
Expand on it. Because just definitely in a free flow. That's what this Detroit is Different podcast studio is for.
Yep. As we, as the magazine is evolving, the conversation is changing from already. It's only been a year, but already the conversation has kind of evolved from, okay, let's highlight this wonderful work that's going on, to we need people's voices to tell their own stories, right? So that's out of that.
This is a way easier form.
Absolutely.
Depending, but even both.
You want to have that. You want to have as many resources as you can. If people want to write, they can write. If they want to draw a picture, if they want to talk it out, let's give them all the tools they need to do that.
Yeah, whatever it may be.
Yeah,
I'm with it. I'm with it. Especially over there in that wheelhouse of Riverwise, you have one of my big homies in Gloria House, Mama and Neb.
Yes.
When you told me she was editing my story, I was like, damn, this is amazing. And then I saw her. She's so she's so graceful and stuff.
Yeah,
she is.
Like,
yes, Brother Carter.
Yes.
Just had a couple different things.
She's fantastic. It's a wonderful editing crew over there, man. It's been a great experience. But yeah, we need to like strengthen those relationships, because that's where we're at now. Is like, okay, now as we move forward, as I mentioned earlier, all these people are doing all these wonderful things. Now, how do we like start to
build that synergy and get it all connected?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a lot of cool things. I think live events. Let's talk. It's a lot of heavy things happening too that come through you all, because being a voice for the community. The whole the traumatic experience where the young lady's in jail right now and possibly may have a child while incarcerated.
I'm glad we should definitely talk about Suwatu. Mm-hmm.
And that is something that's come to your door.
Mm-hmm.
Along with that, it's other things that come to my door. And like, this is what happens having a stronger connection to the people, so, building different platforms that can deliver these messages where you can build that support for.
Mm-hmm. And making people realize that, one of the things I hope we're doing is that helping people realize that their story is important. However you tell it, as you were saying, we can write it. Maybe it's a picture, maybe it's a poem, whatever it is. Maybe we talk it out on a podcast. But that story is very important right now that we tell it in this environment that we call Detroit City, which is rapidly changing, and and a lot of this legacy, a lot of this history is being literally paved over. We need to talk about these things. Talk about how we resist it. Talk about how we respond to it. But also just talk about what it was. What stories you have. What means a lot to you.
Okay.
Submissions.
So coming up next for Riverwise, what are some stories that we should be paying attention to? What do you see next? What's next creatively for you?
Yeah. Well, Riverwise. So we just released the 5th issue.
Okay.
Right here.
That is I love that cover.
Right here.
I love that cover.
And I brought another one too because
you brought a couple. It's like a stack that I'm gonna be giving away to Detroit's different guests coming up, and we'll be having some people up in here like
yeah. Well, this is gonna be a dropout. This is gonna be a distribution point. Hopefully,
please do.
Yeah.
I know David Humphreys from Hair Wars.
We need to
his whole team will be coming.
We need to make sure Davidson and Linwood's got their share of Riverwise Magazine.
Yes.
But I brought 2 up because I need to give a shout to Zoo Pere, who's been designing our covers from the very beginning. This is the first one that he didn't do the original illustration for. Mm-hmm. We actually got permission from the Church of St. John Coltrane in California. Give us permission to use this John Coltrane icon, which I'll talk about in a second. But I wanted to bring up, another one of his. He's done like 5 covers for us, all amazing collage style illustrations.
Yeah, all of them are really. It's like real art.
Mm-hmm. He's a beast. But Zoo's doing some fantastic things, so I had to bring up just some of his work as well. But we've had. The presentation has been fantastic. It's an interesting conversation because, you want to have that dynamic piece, that dynamic cover and that dynamic layout, so people pick it up. But we also want people to, to pay attention to the ideas and the conversations. I hope that we're presenting in the magazine as well. So, but we've had some fantastic covers. But coming up next, the next one will be out in June, late May, maybe last week in May, first week in June.
Okay.
We've been talking about in this issue. We gave a lot of space to transformative art and culture. Mm-hmm. We have a piece I'll mention real quick. We have a piece in here about the Emory Douglas Family Youth Arts Program, which came out of the Feed and Freedom program down on the Lower East Side. And Emory Douglas, who was a former minister of culture for the Black Panthers, is actually coming to town on the 18th. Actually, he's coming to town on the 14th, and he'll be in town. He's doing a couple events between the 15th and the 18th. So we got a little piece on that in here, and hopefully we'll be doing an interview with him, and then for the next issue. And we hope to have Zoo, who's been designing these covers, have a Q&A with Emory Douglas, which will be amazing. Mm. So we've been giving some time and space to art and culture, and then also something that some folks are calling new work is something that needs to be mentioned that we featured in this last magazine. One great example being Carlos Nealbach and his windmills that he's doing over in his workshop over near Shane and Gratiot at the Can Arts Handworks workshop, where he's designing these windmills out of found objects. He has these windmills that he makes from like old satellite dishes. He's an old school, but here's the thing: he's an old school metal worker. Like he worked on the Fox and he worked on some other city buildings and some old churches. So he's like he's like one of the most sought after metal workers in the country. But he's posted up on Shane and Gratiot, and he's been making these, and he's trying to he wants this to be a community asset, a community workshop, and he's created these windmills out of old satellite dishes that are, he says and others say, are more efficient than the industrial windmills you see with the 3 blades. They spin all the time, and he's got them turning these generators and creating electricity and all these crazy projects. He's amazing. So
That sounds very interesting.
yeah, man, it's some cool stuff.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
All interesting.
it is all interesting, man. When you put it all together, you just see the possibilities, man. You see the possibilities that are there from the work that's being done now.
Let me as we close out,
Yeah.
we're getting into a little overtime, but
Yeah.
I want to give if people want to connect with Riverwise and submit something or whatever,
Thank you.
they got an idea, how do they go about getting in contact with you or the team or whatever?
So let me say again, let me emphasize again that we're looking for submissions from folks on really any topic. If you pick up the magazine, you'll kind of see where we're going. We're talking about a lot of community work that's being done, community organizing around solutionary work that's resisting, a lot of these social injustices that we're dealing with in Detroit and across the nation and across the globe. So we need submissions in the form of articles, poetry, original artwork. But the first thing I would do would be to reach out to us at riverwisedetroit@gmail.com is the email. And then riverwisedetroit.org is the website. You can always check us out there as well. And that would be the best place to start as far as, getting involved beyond just picking up the magazine. We need money donations to keep this thing going, but like I said before, the submissions, written submissions, is a great way to support the magazine as well.
All right. Along with that, just the general Detroit is different classic questions.
Yeah.
As we can close out.
Yeah.
Your very first car, year, make, and model, and what year did you get it?
The first car that I could call mine, although it was my parents, but I was using it more than they were. Was it 81 VW Rabbit, the hatchback?
Okay.
I don't know. I don't even know. I mean, you see them
they still make the
occasionally.
Rabbit.
I mean, they definitely don't make them. But I mean, I don't even know if you see. I haven't even seen a Rabbit around in a while. But it was just like a short little hatchback thing, and that would have been like I don't know, 87, 88.
Okay.
Where
was the first place you went?
In the car? Oh man, you're talking to about to be old fella, man. I don't even know. I'd have to make something up. I have no idea.
You have no idea.
I gotta be honest.
Okay. All right. You are a DJ at the end of the fireworks at Woodward and Jefferson.
Oh, wow.
You get to play 3 songs. What songs are you playing?
Ooh. 3 songs. Fireworks. Downtown. Detroit. I would play. Let me see. I'm trying to think back. I always think back to when I get asked a question like that is the Electrifying Mojo. You down with that whole thing? Yeah.
Good old Electrifying Mojo.
Yeah, and all that, the way it was.
Man,
just,
they had everybody in Detroit buying Prince records.
That's what I'm saying. So I gotta go Prince. What song? Be something off of Purple Rain at the very end of.
Okay, so that's that. You're going backwards. So Purple Rain.
Well, I didn't. I'm trying to get the order. Let's see.
People gonna break out their lighters.
I'm gonna go.
Nowadays, their cell phone flashlights.
That's at the very end of the fireworks when everything's already hit the water, and everything's all done. You know what I'm saying? Everyone's like, "Oh, we got to go home now." What else would I do? Been talking about electronic music. I wanted to shout out to the Juan Atkins track, but my favorite track, I can't remember the name of it though. I do some electro stuff, some electronic stuff in the middle, and then I would maybe some funkadelic just to get people moving.
Okay, so Juan Atkins. I guess it could be Dendata, or it could be. Surprised you didn't say Good Life. That's what a lot of people.
Nah, that wasn't one of my favorite. I wouldn't do guess. That's too.
What a lot of people would go with.
That's. I want something a little more.
And then Parliament Funkadelic.
I don't know. I mean, One Nation would be just so everybody's happy.
I feel you.
You know,
I feel you.
Young and old.
I got you. And then the last question: you can rename Woodward after one person. Who would it be and why?
Wow. I don't know, man. I mean, can it be someone who already has a street named after them?
Yeah, it could be.
Okay. I think I will go either. I mean, I think that, not to keep it too close to home, I think James Boggs has done so much in this city, and not just beyond Detroit, where he should get some recognition, even if it comes in the street name. I don't know what a street name. I don't know how far a street name goes these days. Beyond,
I don't know. I mean, people get stuff mailed to you. I
Right.
I don't know what the residual income on a street name
or Malcolm X. I think, even though that's already it's already a street here, but.
So Malcolm X.
But, yeah.
So maybe you split it in two.
Maybe. So from
it'd be
Jefferson
Detroit Red and Highland Park.
From Jefferson, right? From Jefferson to New Center, split it up.
It'd be Malcolm X.
Yeah.
And then,
But there are many others, folks, who've done such great work, in this city. Man, this city's been a movement city for a long time, and that's a tough one. But we should definitely. I mean, that's a great question because there's a lot of names on stuff that we'd love to swap out, and give some love to some folks that did some real work.
All right, this is a guilty pleasure question, and then this is it. Because you've interviewed and talked to so many people. Who's your favorite interview been so far?
You talking about me interviewing someone else?
Yeah.
Man, I gotta think about that one too. I gotta break it up because there's the Riverwise interviews, and because we've just started to do more Q&As as another way of getting folks getting their words on the page. But I really want to take it back to the Michigan Citizen. Man, I want to cite this one interview that we did when me and Zenobia were doing that radio /
the radio
internet TV
joint.
show, yeah,
TV 33.
But I can't think of the man's name.
WHBR.
It was Ed Mick. He was the head of a conglomeration of unions downtown, and the reason I cited is because and talk about writing books. I mean, if we ever get to go back and do this again, we always think about because at the time, we rush through things so much, all these important issues, and I really want to get to the point at some point where you can I really envy people that can take time with a piece, and not have to rush through it. But he was telling us about how the union was. This was before the right before the bankruptcy Detroit situation, and he was explaining to us this is not exciting, but it's interesting to me because it speaks to how the bankruptcy was just it was a total sham. But he was telling us about how the unions had negotiated this deal with the city, and they'd found this money that the city needed to operate, operating expenses, and they were going to take these cuts, and it was just such a revelatory moment as far as that. That's when we knew that the whole financial, the whole bankruptcy proceedings were a sham, and then we found out later, of course, that they were.
I remember, this is how much y'all know somebody. Remember when you interviewed, you may not even remember. Remember you interviewed John Carlos?
Oh yeah, at MLK High School.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, he was a dynamic individual, man. That was a cool interview too. Well, the environment was strange because it was at this track meet, and he was in town to kind of be there, and I don't know if people. Does everyone know who John Carlos is?
I guess. Okay, John Carlos and Tommy Smith are the two gold and silver winning Olympic runners for the United States of America that held up the Black Power fist.
That's right, in Mexico.
With gloves in Mexico City in the 1968 Olympics.
Yep.
And since then, as in this world of Colin Kaepernick being ostracized, they were definitely dealt with a lot of being ostracized and never truly being embraced as the Olympic champions that they were.
Certainly affected the rest of their careers. But yeah, talking with him, I mean, you wouldn't know it. I mean, he still had that spirit of resistance, and there was never a point at which he indicated that he had any regrets, at all, and that was inspiring. Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, John Carlos.
Thank you, sir.
Hey man, thanks for having me, man.
Yes, sir.
You're doing great work, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah,
we'll do it again.
All right.
Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.